All right, so this is my review of the Fortus Pilates Maple Elite Home Folding Reformer. So I've had this reformer for maybe almost 2 months now, and I've been able to use it with some clients. I actually had the opportunity to take it over to a client's house and leave it there when I was going over for home visits after this client had hip surgery. So that was a big bonus because I can't take my big ones with me. So I just wanted to show how well it works in comparison to something like a Merrithew reformer. And I know it's not really a fair comparison because this is a residential grade. And the reformers that I use are commercial grade. That said, I think it still performed really, really well. So just to start, I'm going to talk about the portability of the machine and the way that it stores and moves around. So I'm about 5'5" on a good day, and it is fairly tall, and it does take up a decent amount of space. The good news is it is on these casters, but they're not swiveling casters, so making turns isn't so great. It's also a fairly heavy machine. I can't remember the stats now, but I think it's like 150 pounds, something like that, which is more than some of the other home reformers that you'll see on the market. So moving it around is not something that I would suggest on a regular basis. And so in regards to, taking it up and downstairs or in and out of a house, but it is doable if you have two relatively strong individuals. When it comes to storing the reformer in an upright position, I do like to keep a bungee around the frame here so that it doesn't open up unexpectedly, because the casters do glide fairly well, or the wheels do glide fairly well, and I just don't want my kids or, if you've got pets at home, kind of getting in there and opening it up accidentally. So I just have this bungee here for safety. So it's pretty easy for me just to take on and off. All right, so bringing that aside, if I turn the reformer sideways, you can see it is fairly deep. It does take up almost, it's like my whole body width, let's say, something like that. I think I'm that wide. But if you've got it up against the wall, tucked away somewhere, it's a nice looking piece of equipment. It's not quite so much of an eyesore. And if you are going to be investing in a reformer, sometimes a folding reformer is the only option you have, in which case I think this is quite good in regards to creating or having something that's quite compact. Looking at the headrest here, I do appreciate this really cute little spring here that they've got that you can use when you're lying down, but then when you're storing it, it also helps keep that headrest from flopping around, right? So it's nice to kind of have that feature as well. If we turn the reformer around, we can see the back. So they have these little plastic clips to hold the pulleys in place, and they just clip in and clip out when you're not using the reformer or when you're moving it around. And then there's a really great spring storage system here, where if you need to, you can always just pop them into these clips. I know it's kind of hard to see, but just like these plastic clips, there are some plastic clips down here as well to keep the springs from moving around, if that's a concern, right? So we can just stick that right in there. Let's see if we can turn it a bit. I don't know if you can grab it. I don't know if you can grab an angle of it, but you can see even me just trying to turn the reformer, it's very easy to open. So that's why I have the bungee around it. So if we're going to open the reformer now, let's unclip these pulleys so they're not quite in the way here, right? I'm going to take these straps all the way down. And this can be a little bit awkward, but once it's unfolded, it's actually quite fine, right? I just don't want the pulleys underneath when I unfold it, because then it's a little bit harder to get out. That said, I don't fold it and unfold it that often. I've had it sitting open, so maybe you can find a better system for, keeping the straps out of the way. I'll turn it around again one more time so you can see the foot bar. So from here, we can see that there's this great little foot bar in place to keep the reformer carriage from drifting away. And so I do find that that's quite helpful. You just have to make sure that it's locked before you open and close the reformer. Okay, so if we're trying to open it, I'm going to turn it sideways now. I'm going to have one foot holding one side, and then I can pull here. I've got one hand on this bar. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this bar here, right? And so I can control the rate at which the reformer lowers to the floor. Let's see if we can get this in a good position. So coming down all the way, there it is. And now I just have to place the pulleys into, or the posts into the receptacles there. So let's see. This one just really easily snaps into place. It's all very simple. I wouldn't say that there's a lot of difficulty in putting the reformer together. You can see there's these great little pins here. So if we want to put them in place, I'm just going to pull that pin out. And I want my pulley facing the carriage, of course, and you can decide the height that you want the carriage or the post to be in. I do generally like a little bit taller. This takes a minute to kind of figure out where that goes, but once you've got it, it's pretty sturdy in there. There's a little bit of shake, but I don't find that this looseness tends to be a problem. Oh, let's just make sure it's in all the way. Is that in all the way? Yes, it is. Or no, it's not. So that's, I would say that it takes a minute to really try and figure out where things go. Let's do the other side. So same thing over here. Again, like really easy to take these pins out. Right, so just pressing the little knob thing or little nubbin thing. We're gonna place the pulleys facing the carriage and then slide that down. So just trying to figure out if it's the same height. I should mention, you can fold the reformer with the posts in place. It just increases the depth of the reformer when it's standing up and it's being stored. So that's why I have them snapped into the back so they're not kind of jutting out forward. But I think that's pretty good. And let me just take a minute to fix that here. Okay, great. So that's right in all the way. That's in all the way. Great. So from here, we can look at the foot bar. The next step to setting it up is pulling that foot bar and opening up. So I'm going to tug it. Oh, it's a little stiff. So let's see if we can get it to go. Oh, no, that's really stuck. There we go. That's one side. And where's the other side? So this is the thing that I don't mind about the reformer, is that the foot bar is really quite sturdy, albeit maybe a little bit stubborn to adjust when you're just trying to set it up. So pulling this out can be really tricky. Let's see if that's gonna go. There it is. There's one side. And then we'll do the other side here. And then now it comes up. So you have to make sure you're tugging this way on the foot bar before you put it in place. And so, like I said before, I don't open and close it that often. So I imagine if you did this quite frequently, it would probably get a lot easier. Okay, so pushing the carriage back. Let's see. I'll show you the spring system here and the stopper system. So like many reformers, this one doesn't have a stopper or different stopper settings. It just has the foot bar settings and 2 tiers of spring settings or resistance settings here. Okay, so there's an upper tier here and there's a lower tier here. Okay, it also has 6 springs. So 2 red, 2 blue, and 2 yellow, which sort of correspond to like a heavy, medium, and light. I would say if we're comparing to the Merrithew springs, these ones are a little bit lighter. They're not as heavy duty. So if I wanted to use like what I would normally call a heavy spring weight, so a red spring on the Merrithew, I'd probably use a red and maybe like a yellow on the low setting here. But again, you can play with all of those options. I do love the ability to kind of increase incrementally, right? So if I use one red spring, let's put this down so you can see. If I only use one red spring and I just want to touch more weight, then it's so easy just to pop someone up to the next tier on the gear bar. So I really appreciated that, especially with my client who was recovering from hip replacement surgery. It was a really great way to just kind of give him a little bit more, as opposed to my machine here, which only has 3 gear bar settings. I don't have the high precision gear bar on my reformer, so that was kind of nice. And then also like having 6 springs to choose from, right? So having 2 light springs, having 2 blue springs was kind of a great option. So if I could change things, I would probably love this spring system on my commercial grade machine over here. So like Fortus Pilates does have this Maple Studio reformer with 3 tiers, which I think is great. I think that's an excellent option. But insofar as having it on this reformer with only the 2, that's perfectly adequate for me anyway. So let's put this back here and let's move on to talking about the Carriage. So this Carriage I find is probably decently padded if you're lying on your back. I did have my client kneeling on it as well. He didn't have any complaints to say about it, but you know, for me, having used the Merrithew reformers for so long, I would have appreciated a little bit more thickness, a little bit more density in the Carriage padding, as well as the shoulder blocks. So they're fine. Enough that my clients, so it was my client that had the hip surgery, his wife, and then his grandson that I had on the reformer. Nobody complained, right? Nobody said, oh, this is too thin or this is really uncomfortable. So it was perfectly fine for what I needed it for. But if I could compare the two, I would say that I would prefer the density on my commercial grade machine, but I don't think that's really much of a concern, right? So as I said, it's perfectly manageable. Next, let's move on to the straps. So the strap adjustment here, again, is very familiar to the Merrithew one, where it's a really quick adjustment where we just open up the 2 little, I don't even know what you call them. There's like little teeth, and then you can adjust the rope really, really quickly, which was great. The only difficulty is, unlike the Merrithew machines, it doesn't have that retractable pulley system. So I did find the straps kind of got tangled up a little bit. If you are someone that's really good with knots, or perhaps you've worked at a horse stable before, you can probably do a really pretty slip knot here. It's been a long time since I've been in a barn, so I can't really recall how to do that, but I'm sure you can find a way to keep the ropes a little bit more out of the way. So I would say that that was like a very minor concern, especially for home use. The other thing I would say about the ropes is, and the pulleys, is I would say the straps have just a little bit, I don't know what it is, if there's too much like stretch, because oh here, so I mean, when you kind of just test one segment at a time, there isn't that much stretch, but there's enough, I would say, in the full length of the rope that I can feel a difference in the integrity of the strap. So when I'm doing feed-in straps, let's say, the amount of pull that I'm getting is a little bit softer, and you may want that, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, like, I want to make sure that I feel that feedback coming back from the ropes. And so the softness or the give in these ropes was enough for me to notice, but not so much that it would be a problem, right? So again, that's just a very nitpicky point, I would say. The fact that it comes with the double loop straps is really nice. They're really soft, which I think my clients really appreciated. The challenge, I would say, with these is that you can't really switch them out easily. Yes, so yes, I can swap out the straps here. Like, I can undo this and take it off of the rope. But for me, for hygiene purposes, if you have multiple clients using it, it's hard to kind of clean them in between. And therefore, you'd probably have to have another pair if you have like several people using the same machine, or if you like to share with somebody. But again, for home use, it probably doesn't even matter. You're probably just fine using the same set of straps. All right, so on to the pulleys. Oh, I just realized they're different heights. So that's the one thing. It's hard to tell what height the pulleys are at. But I would say I do like these pulleys because they do come up so nice and high. It's a really great option, especially when you're doing feed and straps and you don't want the ropes kind of grazing too close to the body. So having that higher height, I think, is really fabulous. And of course, let's talk about the glide. So the glide is probably the biggest concern I would say people have. How well does this Carriage glide, and is there that bump? So I'm happy to say that there really isn't. It's super smooth. As one of my clients said, it feels like it's butter, which is really great because I feel like, you know, back when I started my Pilates training, I had a little, can I say it, an Aero Pilates, like a really cheap Aero Pilates reformer. I know they have nicer ones, but I had a really cheap one to start off with, and it had that sort of dreaded bump or that dreaded click as the Carriage rolled. And I'm really happy to say that this one doesn't. So I wonder if I can't even really hear it, right? So as I move it, it glides beautifully. I mean, I think you really have to look for it if you're really concerned about that bump. And I think that's the biggest issue I think people have with a folding reformer versus, let's say, a reformer that stores kind of fully upright. So going back to the foot bar, it does have a lot of options in regards to positioning. So I think it's like 5 different positions here. The challenge is you have to make sure that you're pulling it out and then turning and then rotating or tilting it, right, to your desired position, right? So it can be a little cumbersome, but you know, what I do like about this style of foot bar compared to the traditional Merrithew ones is you can pull on it, right? So if we look at, I don't know if you can see the hook placement on the back, if I pull, it comes out of the latch, right? So the odd person will pull on the foot bar and it does make me nervous. So I'm happy to say that with this one, I don't have to worry about that because it's like fully notched into place, right? So that's definitely a bonus. The foot bar padding could be better, but again, it's for home use only, and it's nice that you can remove it easily. I'm sure there are some talented seamstresses out there that could help you create a replacement if that's something that you really wanted to do. The other thing I would say with the foot bar is it is very sturdy, right? Like it's right in there. I'm not worried about that moving around. There's not much shake to it. Let's talk about accessories. So let's put this down all the way. Okay. So for the underside of the reformer, we have these little knobs. I know it's hard to see, but much like the Merrithew reformer, I'm going to take it out all the way if it'll cooperate. There's these little knobs that kind of come in on the underside or the front side of the reformer to really hold things in place, right? So you have the padded platform extender that can kind of go right in there, right? So once it's in, then you can take the 2 little knobs and then tighten them in all the way to make sure it's very sturdy. So again, it's really nice just to have the option of having the platform extender, which is included in the cost. So tightening that up to make sure it's in. Again, it's really quite sturdy here. I mean, again, if I'm being really, really picky and, you know, having some wishful thinking, I would love to have it a little bit wider, right? So there is a gap when the Carriage comes in all the way. I'd love to see it closed, but it's fine. It's just, again, working with some older clients or clients that are recovering from a hip replacement, it's just nicer to have more width here. So let's take this out. And we're going to swap to the jump board. Okay, so the jump board, much like a lot of these home folding reformers, needs to, or in order to be properly put in place, needs to have the foot bar up behind it. So make sure you remember to do that. How does the jump board perform? I'll just stop by showing you the back of the jump board here has this metal plating. So the little knobs and screws can go right into it without damaging it, which is great. But, you know, the big question is, how does the foot bar perform, or the jump bar perform? And so, I mean, again, happy to say that it does really well. I'm going to pop the foot bar up now. Right, so that has to come up all the way, and it sits, again, it's really solid. It's very, very snug. I do appreciate that it's included in the cost, because to buy it separately from another company can be quite a lot. Again, the padding is nice and thick. I actually wonder if it's a little bit thicker than the Carriage itself. Hard to say. But I feel like with all of the impact that this has taken, it's held up really, really well. I have no concerns. Again, you know, I've always just been really afraid that one day I might forget to put up the foot bar, because that's not something that I normally do with my other reformers. But otherwise, you know, it's such a nice little accessory to have included. The other thing that the reformer comes with is the sitting box. And it's quite a nice size. Let me just show you, what, let me show you the box for the Merrithew. And if we compare the two, here, let's put this in front. If we compare the two side by side, there is a significant difference in size, as you can see. But again, it's a home reformer. You know, what are we really expecting in terms of size and things like that? If you are not a tall person, I think this size is just fine. But I can see how for individuals maybe taller than like 5'9", 5'10", doing any sort of like teaser work or lying on your tummy kind of work, this box can be a little bit small for that. Let me just, hold on. Let me show you what I mean. So here, having that box right up against the shoulder rests is quite a bit smaller than this one here. So if I'm doing, let's say, teaser, let me show you a teaser here, or a teaser prep anyway. It's not as big as or as deep as I would want it to be, right? So let's grab these shorter straps, and the glide is so smooth. It really is, moving back and forth. So from here, I would want to have a little bit more space for a taller individual. I'm fine, I'm only 5'5", it's perfectly fine, right? But then if you're going prone, let's say, it might be problematic. I'll just show you prone really quickly with my knees bent. I'm not gonna take that off, I'm just being lazy. Okay, so here if we pop this back and I go onto my tummy for any prone lying work, like this is where I would wanna be, right? But then that's kind of my knees already off the edge of the box. And it's fine for me. But anybody taller may have some trouble here, right? So, I mean, the good news I'm happy to report is I can kind of go through my plow without touching the floor. But, you know, that is one concern for me, is that the box is a little bit small. Otherwise, it's got these nice round curves. I do appreciate those. And these great sort of little handles, which are really nice to have as well. So all in all, like a great value reformer, really smooth glide, great solid build, I would say. The frame, should have mentioned before, is all solid wood. So the outer rectangle piece, and then the inside, I'm not sure what that is, if it's aluminum or steel, something strong. The one thing that I did notice was the carriage here. So this is sort of a veneer over what I think is a plywood. So, I mean, would have been nice to have solid, but I can appreciate that would have, number one, added to the weight, and then quite possibly added to the cost of the reformer. So not a big deal. I haven't found it to be a functional issue at all. So overall, I think this is a great option if you are at home. You don't have to kind of put it away too often. Maybe you have it in a guest room and you just put it away when you're having company. But otherwise, like, I love the spring system here. As I said, the foot bar is great. If anything, maybe a little bit more padding through the foot bar, cover the shoulder rests and the carriage, but I think those are probably my biggest concerns. And I just want to say that I purchased this reformer with my own money. I wasn't approached by Fortus to do a review, but I just wanted to share.